Afternoon's ALCTS webinar in the Institutional Repository series. I'm Pamela Blue, Chair of the ALCTS Continuing Education Committee. Today's webinar is presented by Dan Kipnis, the Senior Education Services Librarian at the Scott Memorial Library at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia, where he is responsible for the Jefferson Digital Commons, the university's institutional repository. Based on his experience in implementing and managing the repository, Dan will share ideas on promoting institutional repositories on and off campus. Dan will be happy to answer questions at the conclusion of his presentation. Please use the question box on your screen to submit your questions. Today's session will be recorded, and you will receive an email with a link to the recording shortly after the conclusion of the webinar, together with a copy of Dan's slides. Now, as I turn the presentation over to Dan, there may be a slight delay.
Thank you, Pamela. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning to some of you, as well as good evening to others. Bonjour and hello. I am Dan Kipnis, and I'm pleased to be invited to present today. Before I begin, I would like to thank the Association for Library Collections and Technical Services, as well as the committee that helped put this together, including Pamela Blue, Wade Wyckoff, as well as Aping Gaffney. For those of you that like to tweet during presentations, we do have a hashtag created, and it's ALCTS IR if you would like to go ahead and tweet and share some knowledge with your followers as we proceed with the presentation. So let's go ahead and let's jump right in. Here's what I plan to cover this afternoon. We'll begin with talking a little bit about my institution to give you some context. Then I'll move into methods of promotion. We'll talk about creating an elevator speech, which seems to be a fairly hot topic these days. We'll definitely talk about workflows, because this is the question that gets asked to me most often. How does all this work get done? Who's in charge of it? We'll definitely show methods of tooting your horn, celebrating your accomplishments, and we'll leave some time for questions near the end. So Thomas Jefferson University, a little bit of background on who we are. We are located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we are one of the oldest medical colleges in the United States. Every year we accept approximately 265 medical students, making us one of the largest medical schools in the country. And our faculty currently now numbers over about 1,000 faculty members that we have. Here you see an image of our simulation building, which was opened in 2007. If you're ever in Philadelphia and you would like to visit our campus, by all means, please do contact me. I'd love to show you around. We offer many different types of degrees here at Jefferson. We're known for our medical school, but we also have a school of nursing, pharmacy. We have degrees in allied health professions. We also have a school of population health, which really is a health policy school. The name was changed, the curriculum was reworked, as well as we have a College of Graduate Studies. So what all this means is that we have a lot of faculty, we have a lot of students, and we have a lot of research, many different types of grants, and it's really a prime environment for collecting as much of that as possible for an institutional repository. So how do we go about that in helping gather a lot of this content and promoting our services? Here's a screenshot of the Jefferson Digital Commons. And currently we have about 4,200 objects, and we have approximately 720,000 downloads. So hopefully this time next year we'll be surpassing the 1 millionth download in our repository. And we started in January of 2006. And the thing to note about our repository is that we are primarily open access, meaning that we don't give links to citations only. We don't link out to abstracts. We really pride ourselves on indexing and archiving full text materials. As well, you'll notice here on the slide that we collect a wide variety of materials. We started off thinking that this could be a university press, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But we're also archiving lots of other types of material. We have extensive historical materials that are incredibly popular among scholars throughout the world. We do have some student materials. We have a lot of teaching materials, since we are an academic health center that serves both the university and the hospital. So we are multi-purpose, and we offer a variety of different resources, and we'll talk about them, and we'll show you some interesting examples as we proceed with our presentation. But now I want to hear a little bit about what some of you are doing with regards to what methods you use for promoting your services for either your IR or really any other library service that you're involved with. And I'm going to ask Wade if he can release the social media poll question for our attendees. This is great. So far, about 80% of you voted, and it looks like many of you are active in some of the more common promotional methods for getting the word out on your services. Leading the way looks like departmental presentations, 78%. We also have faculty and student orientations, which are very common as well. And third, printed materials. And then bringing up the rear at over 50%, we've got social media, as well as library blogging. Thank you so much, Wade, for doing that. So I always find that it's important, no matter what service or product you're trying to promote, that you need to have this brainstorming session. You really need to think about what is the goal and what is it that you're after from the users on your campus. It's really important to develop a message, and you'll see this come into play when we talk about the elevator speech in a little while. I always think it's helpful to think about that, as librarians, we always think we buy these great products and these services, and we really want to promote them, and it's always about us, look what we bought, you really should be using it. But our users really need to see the need. They need to see what problem are they solving, how is this service saving time in their day, what benefit will they have. And once this message gets created, I think it becomes much easier to help promote whatever service you're trying to pass to your users. Commonly, I get this question a lot. We want to start an IR, or we want to go with the service, but these are kind of the excuses that I hear the most, that people don't have enough staff, there's definitely no technical skill set on staff, and that this is the highest commodity, the issue of time. We don't have enough hours in the day to do really what we want to do. So here are some simple solutions, things that we've done here in-house to help solve some of these problems. We use student workers when possible for scanning materials. We train them to load the materials as well. And we also teach these skills to our paraprofessionals and our technicians as well. We also have decided, and we made the choice very early on, that we were going to outsource our institutional repository. We didn't have enough programmers on staff, and we went ahead with Berkeley Electronic Press, and they provide us with customization and design skills, and they host the material. So that was really a big variable within the calculation of determining how we wanted to proceed with an IR. And the truth of the matter is, librarianship is changing. Many libraries now are hiring what are being called scholarly communication librarians for copyright access and institutional repository management and data librarians. So the wave is changing, and it's actually a fairly exciting time. So what solutions are you providing? So from an IR perspective now, how do we promote our IR? What are the things that we build up and we talk about with our users? will say that we'll give their research increased exposure to a global audience. Our numbers really are outstanding. We've had virtually every country in the world somehow find one material within the JDC, which is pretty impressive. We do use Google Analytics to try to get some of these metrics out. We don't use ads, no advertising. We also tout our search engine optimization. So by this, what we tell our users here is that we will go ahead and we will upload medical subject headings, M-based subject headings, keywords to make their materials more findable and indexable on the web. We provide monthly statistics, and this is something that our users really seem to get a lot out, especially from kind of a feedback, return on investment idea. We do not charge any of our users, and we do most of the work for our users. That's the honest truth. When people ask, how does this all get done, we do the loading for them. I think it's too much to ask for them to take this on. We do work with administrative assistants and train them as well in loading materials, but our faculty are very busy, and this is something that they really have expressed very little time in being able to do. So that's a service that we provide. We offer them file flexibility, version control, preprints, postprints, depending on what the publisher allows us and what version of the document or scholarship that they're working on. We sell the idea of stability in a permanent URL. We'll tell them that they can place this in a CV, that they can include this in PowerPoint presentations. If they leave the institution and go somewhere else, it will remain in the Commons because that is work that they created while they were a member of our community. So we emphasize those points of stability and preservation. And as I mentioned earlier, we thought that we would do a university press when we purchased this, and we did go ahead and we have created several journals, which I'll show you momentarily. One of them that's been a really great success is the Jefferson Journal of Psychiatry, which is a journal that was started by our residents, and this continues to go strong, and we are currently in the process of scanning the back files of this journal and making them available as well. So what methods of promotion do we use that may be similar to what you're doing based on the poll results that you shared with me? Some of these will look very familiar. We do extensive workshops, and we are very proud of the title that we've come up for our institutional repository, where we just say it is for shameless self-promotion, increasing your research impact with the JDC. We do a lot of email outreach, and this is actually still a very effective method for us to help gather citations, and we'll walk through the workflow in a little while so you can see how this works. We always seek out invitations for departmental meetings. We've developed our elevator speeches and our talking points, this being the political season in the United States. If politicians have talking points, you know, I think librarians should have talking points when they're trying to promote their services as well. And we'll walk you through in developing, I think, a fairly effective structure for creating an elevator speech. And with social media, it's kind of hit or miss. I think we're all kind of, it's kind of still the infancy of social media. It's tremendous for overthrowing dictators, but for when it comes to promoting services in libraries, I think we're still kind of wading our way through things and trying to figure things out. And you just got to keep going. You got to toot your own horn, and you got to stay on the offensive when it comes to using all of these promotional methods. So here's our website. In the lower right-hand corner there, we do promote our workshops on our website. We make them available, and we've had some very good success with these workshops. We've had the Dean of the School of Health Policy show up, and he became a tremendous champion of the JDC, and now they are really one of our heaviest users. So it only takes that one workshop to get that one individual in the room to sell the product, and hopefully you'll have as much success as we did with the School of Health Policy. Other things that have really worked for us is I have a continuing Google News alert for our institution, and you'll be surprised at the type of things that get picked up by Google and sent your way. So here was one of our professors who did a study on the cure for hangovers, and this was picked up virtually from every media agency throughout the world, different countries. Obviously, I approached him once I shared the Google alert with him. He was very receptive. We have it in our Commons. So if you want to learn the cure on hangovers, by all means, download his article. It's a very interesting read. Other things we do as well, we do use Facebook and Twitter. And as I mentioned, this is kind of hit or miss. Our numbers aren't anywhere near what other libraries are like, especially public libraries. So the New York Public Library, Seattle Public Library, the Library of Congress. I mean, they have thousands of followers, and they have very active communities. But you know, like I said, I feel like we're in the infancy of this, and I do have some tips that I'll share with you in a moment on maybe improving your social media presence as well. Facebook offers the insights. You can get all the metrics that you want. You can get demographic information. The great thing about the metrics as well, you can figure out which posts have been received well, so maybe you can figure out which topics your users are most interested in seeing, and that way the numbers can take off. I'm a big fan of Bitly. Bitly, for those of you that don't know what this is a URL shortener. What this does is it takes a very long URL and it will shorten it for you. And in the process of shortening it, one of the nice things you can do is if you add a plus sign at the end of your Bitly link, you can get metrics back. So here it's telling me how many people have clicked on this link that I sent out a while ago. As well, it will tell you how they have been referred to it and locations in the world. So here we have this link with someone from Brazil came across this and found it somewhat interesting. So with a Bitly link, there's possibility there for extract, and the great thing is it will shorten those really long URLs. There's some really great literature right now on social media. These are two articles that I recently read that really are fascinating. And the first one really has some really interesting information. And what he did is he kind of did a survey of all the libraries that have a Facebook page. And he found, and I'll quote here, that the most significant findings are that approximately 91% of the posts do not include any comments. Over 82% of user participation is expressed via the like by prospective users. That would be, example, college or university faculty and students, but rather by library personnel, employees affiliated with the same institution as the library, and alumni. So here what he's getting at really is that there maybe would be improved comments if it was more student involvement in posting actual tidbits. And I know this is very controversial because we like to have control over what's being distributed through our communication media, but I highly recommend both these articles to kind of get those social media juices flowing and to figure out kind of what other institutions have been posting and what has been successful and what hasn't been successful. Other interesting metrics that I've come across here recently, this is something that was presented that I came across about a month ago. It's called totalimpact.org. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to gather as many places on the web that are picking up specific articles. They're trying to track research, and probably the best example here is showing you an actual article that was published in the Public Library of Science. And here you can see it's picking up things from, you know, how many citations from Wikipedia and Mendeley, and things that, you know, we may not have direct access to. And I've spoken with BPress to see if there could be some sort of incorporation for increasing kind of the metrics and trying to figure out what sort of incorporation we can have with our institutional repository. But I think kind of this is where it's all going, in the direction that we're trying to collect as many metrics from as many different sources. And there's stuff out there on the web that's incredibly popular. We know that our users go to Wikipedia and link from Wikipedia to the JDC, so that's something we want to try to capture in our metrics and figure out how to be involved with that. Many people are familiar with Brian Matthews. If you are not, hopefully this is the introduction to Brian and all his tremendous work that he does. And he posted in May of 2011 a report that he had one of his students write on getting more engagement from social media. If you haven't read this, I highly recommend it. All you have to do is Google it. And the report itself, written by the student, got thousands of views, and she has some really great recommendations and tips for users on kind of how to engage with students and promoting services, especially when you're using social media. These are probably the most common tips from the report. It's really not revolutionary, except I would say the last point. One that I've mentioned already is to have the students engage with other students. That's a big one. And obviously you want to try to update as frequently as you can and use your comment sections for interactions. And it always helps to actually ask them for feedback, you know, through the comments form. What do you like? Is this helpful? Please share your comments, and, you know, feel free to retweet a comment. So those were the tips from the report. The unique thing about it, it was written by a student from a student's perspective, so highly recommend Googling that and taking a look at that report. We use our library blog to post any sort of interesting deposits. Here we were touting our 500,000 download date and reminding our users the type of content that we can archive. And some things really, sometimes we just miss the boat. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Reddit, but Reddit is kind of this service on the web, and it's telling you kind of what's hot on the internet right now. And it's set up by different communities. So, you know, there's no fee for this. You just create up a free account. You post something, and then users vote. They'll vote upwards or downwards. They'll either approve of something, they won't approve of something. And, you know, some of the stuff tends to be somewhat sensational. You know, it's very gossipy. But, you know, they have a scientific community that I thought would post this lecture on neurotheology that I thought was kind of interesting. And, you know, after about a week, really no one had clicked on it. So it's kind of hit or miss. Not everything's a success. But, you know, I think that when it's something as simple as creating a free account and participating in something to see you know, you never know when something may take off and it may work out. Other methods here, many of these are probably familiar to you. These are things we have done over the past few years. And the one with the asterisk for us is probably the one that has the most importance. And the reason we say that is because many of the publications in scientific journals, many of the publishers do not allow us to simply load a PDF. We have to load what's known as the postscript, and preferably a final Word version. And this is important for our faculty to know because they don't save the postscripts. You know, they're working in collaborative environments, and in many cases, they just want to post the PDFs. So this is something, it's a big education issue. But once they get the hang of it and, you know, they see the benefit in the JDC, then they do start to save those postscripts, and we have had success. We've presented at faculty retreats. You can also make flyers to hand out with your paychecks. Food always works. We've created posters and brochures, and at the end of the presentation, I'll give you a link where you can access our promotional brochure as to how we sell the IR to our users. And we also look for being published in article publications and campus publications, and I'll show you an example of that in a little while as well. I think this is an important thing to also be involved with is training your staff. Many of us work in places where we have multiple service points, and it's really important, I think, for everyone within the library to have an idea of what the JDC is and what it can do for the users, and teaching them the talking points for this. So here's a very simple example that I'll share with you. We work with the AV department here on campus, and they're the ones who not only record conferences on campus, but they'll also design and print posters. So what we did is we created a simple description of the JDC, attached a release form. Now, whenever a researcher goes to pick up a poster for, say, a conference that they're attending, they're shown this description, they're asked to sign their release form, and then quarterly I get sent posters sent to me via the head designer there, and I'll upload those into the JDC, and then they are being preserved and made available to a global audience. These are conference posters that get presented at conferences, and A, they may not always be indexed by the conference, and B, they may not be made available to a global audience. But this way the conference lives on rather than the floor of someone's office after a conference is passed. So we're talking about maybe 170 posters so far. This was because we collaborated with the AV department. So kind of thinking outside the box and just trying to think of all the different service points that you may have, and then making sure that the staff that manage those service points can say a few words or maybe hand out a business card or a release form to get the conversation going. Working with a PR office as well is also very popular. Our PR office sends out press releases on tremendous grants or fabulous new studies that come out from our institution, trying to work with them on adding more links from the JDC into press releases, so it creates that cycle. So not only can people, you know, read about the abstract or what the conclusion of the study is, but if they wanted to actually read the full text of the study, they could link back to the JDC. Some numbers. Let's talk about maybe what other people are doing throughout the world. There's a publication. It's called the International Survey of Institutional and Digital Repositories. And this is a survey of 56 institutions, 11 different countries. It's published by the Primary Research Group, and their numbers are, I think, somewhat astonishing, really. For instance, only 73% of IRs are linked to a college website. Other things that kind of caught my eye, less than 2% had a link to an iTunes account or iTunes U. None at the time had YouTube sites or channels, as well as very few actually used a blog or had an IR blog per se specific to their institutional repository. This number also caught my eye, that only 39% had brochures. I don't understand why that number isn't higher. I don't know how you can promote something if you don't have something to hand to someone to kind of describe your service. And this also kind of caught my eye, that there weren't annual reports being published. I was always under the impression that librarians loved creating reports, and this number caught my eye as being somewhat low. But here you can see the survey does go ahead and ask the users many types of questions. Who's contributing to the repository, who's using them, how are things measured, how successful have the methods been, and what's kind of been a financial impact, if at all. So if you have time, highly recommend taking a look at the study. It's got some really interesting data with it, and it will hopefully spur as well additional ideas for promoting your institutional repositories. So now moving on to the elevator speech, and this is going to be now our second poll question for the afternoon. So Wade, if I can ask you to launch the elevator speech question. Okay, looks like about 75% of you do not have an elevator speech, 20% of you do, and 5% of you want to know what is an elevator speech. So this is great. So let's go back here. So an elevator speech, you're in luck today, and you're going to save quite a bit of money. Here's an email I recently got: how to promote and sustain your research using the elevator speech. It's a 60-minute webinar. They wanted only $197 for you to learn all the ins and outs of an elevator speech. And we're going to now walk you through the elements so you can build your own elevator speech. And we were very fortunate. A few years ago, a professional communicator, coach named Michael Schaefer, he's based out of New York City, he came down to the Philadelphia area, and a lot of librarians were here for a conference, and he kind of presented on giving presentations, and he does this great thing where he records everyone, and you get to watch yourself stutter and mumble and get all sweaty. And he laid out the groundwork for creating an effective elevator speech. An elevator speech really breaks down into, you just have sometimes seconds to just a few minutes to really talk to someone and maybe sell a service or a product. You want to get their attention. These are the elements really in building an elevator speech. You got to start with a grabber. You got to tell them who you are, and we'll talk about the value propositions and the unique elements in a moment. It's easier with examples to show you. So the grabber, for instance, a librarian could start by saying something like, you know, I'm your secret weapon to impress your supervisor. You could say something like, you know, I'm the original search engine. The idea here is that you want to grab the person so, you know, you see maybe their pupils dilate a little bit, their eyebrows go up, maybe they tilt their head, something that will attract them, that will say, wait, what is this person saying? I should listen for a moment. And with the value proposition, what you're trying to do is you're trying to solve a problem or a need. And what you should think about is what unique benefits are you offering? And this, I think, is really great with examples. So I'm going to just let you sit here for a moment. And when you see the company Volvo, what do you think of for a moment? Hopefully, many of you thought of safety, right? This is kind of their value proposition. Here's another one. When you think of McDonald's, what do you tend to think of? Most people will say something like fast food. I would say something more along the lines of consistency, right? The French fry you have on the left coast tastes the same as the one on the right coast. French fries at French fry McDonald's, you know what it's going to taste like. About FedEx. FedEx, most of us know it as the company that strives with on-time delivery. So this is the value proposition. And now it gets really hard because this is something as librarians we're not used to doing very well. What in the world would you say for an institutional repository? What do you think would make sense in this instance? After thinking long and hard, I would say something maybe like research ubiquity and preservation. You want to share research with as many people as you can, and you want to preserve it as well. Unique elements, you can say librarians help save time by loading content. Researchers maybe save lives by dispersing their research. They can help find grant money, look for collaborators by sharing their research online. And the call to action, you want to seek that connection with the person that you're talking about when you're trying to form this elevator speech. What's in it for the listener? What's the motivation? Okay, so the groundwork has been laid out. We kind of have an understanding of what the elements are. Elevator speeches in 5 minutes, right? That's what we're learning today. Here's how I put it together. And obviously, this can be reworked. You're going to want to change this to make it yours, maybe use different terminology. Keep in mind, you're walking onto an elevator. You see someone that you want to promote a service to. You have a short amount of time. So how do you begin? You may say something like, Dr. Smith, let me distribute your research to the world. How are you? Hi, I'm Dan Kipnis, and I manage the Jefferson Digital Commons. Notice here I'm mentioning the name. It's the digital archive of the university. What am I not doing here? What I'm specifically not doing is I'm not saying institutional repository, right? I'm not using jargon. We love jargon as librarians. Our users don't know what an institutional repository is. You have to use language that they understand. In this case, it's digital archive that we're saying because those are words I think that people understand. You may now proceed with your value proposition. You may say something like, let me archive your published articles, your videos, your conference posters in the JDC. And then you'll say, what are the unique elements? Well, this is what you're going to do for the person. Email me your content, and I'll load it for you. I'll provide you monthly email stats, and I'll really make your work more findable on the web. That's kind of what you're selling to them. And then you wrap it up, and you'll say, you know, let's get all your research and scholarly works out onto a global audience. You know, here's my card. Email me, send me your questions, and that's it. That's the elevator speech. They obviously can be much more extensive than this, but the key is you want to try to make this your own, and you want to try to make a connection. I highly recommend gathering colleagues of yours and getting that video camera out and practicing. That's what we did when Michael Schaefer came down. It was a lot of fun, and it was truly a learning experience in trying to structuring elevator speech. More persuasion, more things I think that can help promote and get your users on board and thinking about things. For my daughters, in this case, I had them washing dishes, and the idea was that they were going to get some dessert. Eloise, as you can see, my oldest, is very suspicious. She doubts my motivations, and my youngest, Tessa, here, is much more receptive. She's just a smiley little doodly bug who's really willing, and this is kind of the experience that you're going to have when you make these presentations. You're going to have people that are skeptics and people that are going to be believers. The key is to work with the believers, and they become your champions eventually. I also think there's a big element of this when it comes to trying to promote an institutional repository. People like seeing numbers. They like seeing a number that goes upwards on a graph. But in all seriousness, I think this is what faculty really are striving for when they're looking for working with an institutional repository. They want visibility, they want citations, they want respect, they want to get money. And this is just another avenue for them to kind of get their word out and to help in their tenureship process. Many of you have probably heard of the Ithaca study. This is published by Roger Schoenfeld and Ross Housewright. And a fascinating statistic here, over 70% of faculty responded they use Google or Google Scholar often or occasionally to find information in academic journals. So we know as librarians, where are people starting their searches? Where are they looking for content? And we know what the answer to this is. It's not a surprise. We see the behavior within our libraries and how our researchers conduct research. And this is not from just any resource. David Lee King, this is from his website. And we know that people are using Google, Google Scholar, Bing, Wikipedia, and he references the OCLC Perceptions of Libraries study. So this is fairly authoritative, and we know that this is where people are going to when they start their research. Other things you need to persuade people with, increase citation rates. I know this is an incredibly controversial topic. There's a lot of literature that says yes and some says no. Depending on the discipline, though, the numbers here, for instance, for clinical medicine are astronomical. When you take a look here that the citation rates increase by participating in open access models, which institutional repositories try to support. There's a fabulous article by Stephen Herrad, who's really the leader in open access. I highly recommend this publication for you to take a look at. It's incredibly thorough and scientific, and all the different types of tests that they conducted in figuring out the value of self-selected or open access mandated publications. Another thing to think about, and this is from like an altruistic perspective, but digital repositories now account for 17% of journal articles obtained when libraries need an article that is not in their own collections. So think about this for a moment. You're a library and you want to do an interlibrary loan for a user, but maybe you'll first go out onto the web to see if you can find this publication for free before having to do that interlibrary loan. And I think that this number is just going to go up over time. And this comes from the survey of library database licensing practices. It was a fairly large report. It looked at 70 academic, special, and public libraries. So the sample size is fairly large, and I think this is kind of the altruistic perspective for finding information. Other things that you can show for persuasion, these are the monthly reports that are generated from bpress. These are my monthly numbers, for instance, for all of my works that I have in my the repository. The first number tells me how many downloads per month, and then the second number below that will tell you from the day it was entered into the repository to date, how often has the material been downloaded. We're an institution that still publishes faculty cards, so I receive these and I immediately go ahead and I reach out to the faculty member. I'll send them an email. I'll welcome them to the institution. I'll tell them what the JDC is all about and remind them kind of all the benefits that they can have in trying to participate. Emails. Fabulous way of communicating. I still think they're a valuable way of reaching out to your faculty. Here was one that I received from a faculty member from psychiatry, and I've highlighted here the word service because I think this is when you're having some success. He sent me an article, and then he asked the question, is this the service that lets me know if others download the paper? Yes, it's the service. That's exactly what we are providing as a service. I followed up with him, and then he responded and said, great, I'll try to send other colleagues because I asked him to spread the word. So the power of the word of mouth, I think, is probably the #1 technique when it comes to helping to promote a service. I'm also a big fan of telling stories. I think narratives help tremendously. People love listening to stories and hearing success stories. Here are 3 that I'll just quickly run through. Neonatologist at Harvard wanted to publish something in MedEd portal. She found a video in the JDC she wanted to use, and obviously we cleared permission for that. She contacted us, and haven't followed up if it was published eventually, but I assume that it has. Secondly, we have a professor from Rice University in Texas. He found a publication in our Commons, had 40 students enrolled. He wanted it for his course pack. We cleared permission with that as well. And then probably our biggest coup is Oxford University found some videos for teaching residents, developing skills at the bedside, and they expressed a lot of interest in using them as well. We'll also get things like this, where we've digitized our yearbooks and we get emails from alumni. Well, they'll say something like, oh, we'll download the entire copy of the book for our personal use. Thank you for scanning this. This is value. This is service. This is what libraries stand for, making these historical materials available, and it really helps in promoting the JDC. We also reach out to top authors. These are the 3 most popular items in our repository. I updated these numbers yesterday, and since they've been loaded, you can see the download rate. So what we do is we reach out to these authors, we remind them to take a look at these numbers, and we continue to ask them to deposit more materials and send them our way. What are some of the things then we've deposited? We've done podcasts. We've recorded the capstone presentations from public health. We use Panopto for recording these presentations and archiving them. We have teaching videos, we have conference posters, we record grand round presentations, we have an art gallery archive, we have historical collections. Let's show you some images so you can get a flavor. These are the videos. On the left-hand side are the teaching videos. On the right-hand side are videos taken from cadavers from our anatomy lab. The whole human body is available. If you want to, you can access any of these videos for learning any part of anatomy that you want. We have photo novels. These are based on graphic novels. These are in Vietnamese, and these are on breast cancer, breast examinations, patient education materials that we made available and that are searchable as well through the Commons. Conference posters I've mentioned. We also archive symposia and conferences that take place on campus. We record them. We make them available within our Commons. We have a lot of fabulous artwork, as I'm sure you do at your institutions, and we get a lot of questions with regard to that. So we created an art archive, a gallery, where we give important information, and we show images, and it's a really nice slideshow, so all the different artwork that one can take a look at our institution. Some of you may have heard this before, publibrarians and librishers, easy for me to say, but this was a term that was given by John Unsworth, who's the dean and professor at the University of Illinois, and what it's getting at is the idea of librarians becoming publishers, creating university presses maybe, and here we've tried to do this with the Digital Commons. We've done newsletters for surgery. Here's the Bodine Journal, that's oncology and cancer research. Here's the Jefferson Journal of Psychiatry, which is resident-driven. We also do newsletters. We have one on interprofessional education. We have one on value-based purchasing. And sometimes you really strike gold. For those of you that are fans or have never heard of This American Life, it is an incredibly popular radio show on National Public Radio. You can access the recordings online for free. And this past month, we had one of our cancer researchers, Dr. Jonathan Brody, appear in one of the episodes. And stuff like this is just tremendous. It's incredibly popular, and once we found out, obviously, he gave us permission. We archived it in the Commons, and I expect that over time, this is going to get some really enormous hits. We do historical collections as well. We've done our yearbooks up to 1923. We've scanned all of the alumni bulletins from our medical college from 1922 to the present. We've done books, we've done photographic collections. In short, what we've done is we've tried to develop an in-house scanning shop. So here's a screenshot. This is from our Jefferson Alumni Bulletin, and they actually did a whole spread featuring the work that we had done, scanning all of the bulletins. Here they thanked the library. So this is really great promotion, great publicity. This gets sent to all the alumni of the institution, and they see the value that the library is providing in scanning these materials and making them available. We've scanned historical items. So here's something from the anatomy of the breast. This is from Sir Astley Paston Cooper. This is also a historical work that gets a lot of traffic. We've also done surgical instruments from the Civil War that we have in our archives. We've done photographic collections. This is from the Chair of Family Medicine. Future scanning projects, we hope to expand our yearbook scanning, and we have a great collection of brochures and lectures and speeches from the 19th and 20th century that we'd like to scan and make those available as well. We've also used this WorldCat Collection Analysis Snapshot Program. I don't know how many of you have used this or heard of it, but what this allows you to do is you can limit your searches, but the great thing about this is it tells you what unique items you have in your collection. So we know in medicine, for instance, that we have 34 unique items under the subject heading of medicine. What items do you share with 2 other libraries or 3 other libraries or 4 other libraries? This really helps in getting to the possibility of figuring out what is it that you own in your collection that's incredibly unique that would merit scanning and making available to a global community. So here we figured out that a manual of military surgery prepared for the Confederate States was something that was very unique in our collection. We decided to scan it and make it available. Our scanner by no means is very sophisticated. Here we're using a Microtech. It's $500 at the time. It's kind of broken down over the past few years, but it still serves us well. And we now have 1 technician. We used to have 2, but we have 1. We've trained them. So they scan, they OCR. They do a really nice job in cropping and making images nice for loading into the JDC. So getting to what librarians tend to care a lot about, how does all this get done? Is there a magic genie somewhere that appears and somehow overnight all of this happens? And it really is a multi-step process, and it is completely ongoing. So I mentioned we run a Scopus search. The Scopus search picks up all the articles published by our Jeffersonians. The great thing about this as well is you get to learn where they're publishing. So from a collection development standpoint, that also provides a lot of good information. We export all that into RefWorks to manage the citations. And then I have the technician use Sherpa Romeo to go through the citations and figure out what the requirements from the publishers are. I will then approve the citations to send out emails for. The technician sends out the email to the faculty member, and then from that we get a return rate maybe somewhere between 10 and 20%. So we're not getting everyone to contribute, but what I've noticed is that over time, the more emails that get sent out and they start receiving them, then they'll start to question, they'll come back and they'll ask questions, and we get moving in a positive direction for them to contribute. As I mentioned earlier as well, we do add all the metadata. I've trained technicians in helping us find subject headings for this. And we do use other avenues for getting the word out, including Facebook and Twitter. And we're Blackboard users at our institution, and we do use Blackboard as well. So Sherpa Romeo, for those of you that may not know what this is for looking up copyright policies from thousands of publishers telling you what versions are allowable for indexing. And I think it's really important, and you need to celebrate the milestones when they happen and try to toot your own horn. I'll show you some examples. We've created posters that are in high traffic areas. So this was when we reached 500,000 downloads. We created these. We picked out colorful images, and we put this out within the library as well as out onto the street. You create flyers. The flyers get distributed. You can give them with paychecks. You can put them in people's mailboxes on campus. You can give them to departmental heads or administrative assistants. You get handed out at departmental meetings. All of us have seen word tag clouds. I like using these for reports or emails that I send out. I'm a big fan of Wordle. I also use tag Zito is another popular one. These are free, very easy to create. We publish every year something called an Acer Connections, and a few years ago we featured the comments on the cover. And here you can download this if you want, take a look at how we sold it, how we promoted it. I came up with like a top 10 why you should participate. Things like that it's free, that you get statistics, that you can create a university press, the file flexibility, all that good stuff that comes with an IR. What are we going to do in the future? Things that we're looking at include maybe trying to get retired faculty or soon to be retired to contribute some of their content to create more of a legacy within the IR. Continue to work with our development office to promote many of the historical materials that we're scanning, working with PR to embed more links within their press releases, as well as increasing links in Wikipedia. And we're in the process of digitizing the Jefferson Journal of Psychiatry. And another thing that we continuously do is take a look at our top authors, reach out to them, and ask them to contribute further. When does all this stop? When do you stop promoting? Obviously, you never stop, but I think there are signs that you can look for. If your community can start to use their own words in describing what the GDC is or tell a colleague, that's huge. When you start receiving referrals, and I think that's also a really big thing, when you get emails or you run into a colleague in the hallway and they'll say, oh, you're Dan, my colleague mentioned that you do this, I really like it. I've had a lot of referrals, and that's been really a great way of getting your foot into the door into departmental meetings, and I think over time your marketing will gain momentum. And I will wrap up with this slide here because I feel like this kind of encapsulates what we try to do when we try to promote a service. Many of you are familiar with Kevin Bacon, fabulous actor, tremendous movie in Footloose, The 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. If you've never played it, there's an example. Elvis Presley was in Change of Habit with Ed Asner. Ed Asner was in JFK with Kevin Bacon. You want to create these access points on your campus as best you can. And sometimes I think it's magic the way it happens, and other times it's traditional email. But this is kind of what you want to try to strive for, and with hopefully a lot of success, some perseverance, and some hard work, you can start gathering materials, getting the word out. I appreciate your time this afternoon. this evening, this morning, wherever you may be in the world, and I will be very glad to answer any questions. And the most common question I get asked when I give a presentation, can I get the slides, can I get the slides? You may by going to our institutional repository. I've loaded the slides, as well as you'll have access to the promotional brochure that we've created. And there's my email, and I believe we do have a few minutes, so take a look here. Let's see kind of what questions we may have. It says here, what equipment are you using to scan yearbooks? With the yearbooks, actually, that is something that we sent out at the time. So I believe it may have been even, I want to say Lyricist. It may have been a different company at the time that we did that. But we did send out the yearbooks. There was money in the budget that year. But I'm of the inclination that when we get permission to continue scanning our yearbooks, we will probably do it in-house. Do you restrict PDF files in any way? No printing, view only, allow downloads. Oh, that's a really good question. That's from Laurel Wolfson. And for our conference posters, we do lock them down. That has been a request from many of the researchers. Since we are in a scientific community, ideas are treasured in a big way. So what we've done is we have locked down printing capabilities, but we'll also go ahead and people can magnify the PDF to actually read it and take a look at it. Other things we've done as well is we've created embargoes. So some people have asked for embargoes, so either 6 months or a year. So that's something that we've done. Can you say about the editorial control you offer faculty? Well, editorial control that we offer faculty, part of that is based on copyright. I think it ties in nicely. So we'll work with the faculty member, we'll educate them on what publishers allow us to do and what we can upload. I hope that gets answering to the question. Not too sure about that one, but Mary, if you want to follow up with me, by all means. Jane asks, how do you teach or get post-prints? You said there was some education about that for faculty. Yeah, you need to let them know early on in the process, while they're publishing, while they're writing their manuscripts. If you ask them to produce postscripts from works that they've done over the past few years, in many cases, that's a lost cause and they're not accessible. So really what we're talking about is incoming faculty and trying to get from the starting point of creating their manuscripts so that they are not lost. Ralph asks, can you recommend an open source IR to start for a small college? Open source institutional repositories, I think the major players right now, Content DM and Fedora, I believe, is the other one. And those are the two major ones. I know there are a few others, but from the colleagues that have gone open source with IRs, those tend to be the two most common ones. How large file a 285-page yearbook? Gretchen asks. And for that, off the top of my head, I don't know. I would have to check. I know that also what we've done with some of the bigger historical materials is we've broken down, say, into chapters. So it creates a much smaller file size. You mentioned adding links to Wikipedia. How do you do that? With a lot of frustration. You know that the editors can be sticklers, and it's a matter of creating an account, finding a page, going through the process of inserting a link and seeing what the editors say, and sometimes it can be very contentious, but we try our best. Do you use a streaming server, either hosted or local, for your video content, or do you have users download video content? Yeah, we do have a video server in-house that we use, so that's something that would add to your cost. I think that concludes the questions coming our way, and I do invite any and all of you, you have my email, and please do download the presentations, the brochures, send me email if you have further questions or comments. Always happy to talk to other librarians, and thank you all very much for attending. It's really been a pleasure, and best of luck with all your endeavors with your IRs and as well with any other library services that you wish to promote in the future. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Dan, for that excellent overview on marketing and publicizing the IR to various constituencies on and off campus. Experienced as well as novice IR managers will find inspiration from your comments. Later this afternoon, you will receive an email with a link to an evaluation form for today's webinar. Please take a few minutes to respond and return the form to us. Your comments and suggestions are valuable and help us improve our continuing education offerings and identify topics for future sessions. 2 more webinars are scheduled this year. On December 7th, in our first Transoceanic webinar, Todd Carpenter, Executive Director of NISO, teams up with Terry Minton of the OECD in Paris to examine a number of issues surrounding the management of data sets. On December 14, Scott Wicks and Bob Wolven will share details about the collaborative effort underway between technical services at Cornell and Columbia. In January 2012, in response to many comments, ALCTS will offer for the first time a virtual midwinter symposium. Launching Your Star Potential, Leadership for Today's Libraries consists of 5 webinars presented 1 a day between January 9 and 13. Individuals and groups may register for 1, several, or all of the webinars. Complete details and registration information may be viewed on the ALCTS website. The winter-spring schedule of webinars kicks off on January the 8th with another webinar in the IR series. In Services Lead to Success, Strategies for Repository Growth, Isaac Gilman will discuss how IR development is interwoven with library services. For a detailed list of ALCTS webinars and other continuing education offerings planned for the first half of 2012, please also visit the ALCTS website. As we conclude today's session, my thanks again to Dan for his presentation, and thank you as well to Wade and Iping Chen Gaffey for providing technical support. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We look forward to welcoming you at other ALCTS continuing education offerings in the future.